Welcome, everyone, to the HSC Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Disability Awareness Month event. I'm Dr. JP Sanchez, and I serve as the Executive Associate Vice President for DEI in the HSC office. On behalf of all of us at the HSC Office of DEI and Vice President Dr. Romero Leggett, we'd like to thank you for making time to watch this video and join us. For those who are unable to be here today, the presentation will be recorded and posted on our HSC Celebrations website. Before we begin, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. You've probably already received a link to complete our pre-assessment, so please take a moment to do so. And at the end of the session, you will also be asked to complete a post-assessment. The chat feature is not available. And please place your questions in the QA box at the bottom of your screen, and it will be taken up by our moderator or speaker. So with that, I would like to introduce our Executive Director of HSLIC, Ingrid Hendricks.
Thank you, JP. I would love to take on that title, but actually I'm just the division head for my unit. Melissa is our executive director, but thank you for giving me that extra boost. I'm so pleased to welcome everybody today to our presentation on accessing the Center for Development and Disability Information Network Library, a guide to New Mexico's free library on disability. So happy to have Emily Roberts here today. She is the Library Services Coordinator for UNM's Center for Development and Disability Library. She's going to share with us today valuable resources that the CDD Library offers freely to the public, our clinicians, educators, and students. So this is a hidden gem of UNM that I think everybody needs to know about and definitely utilize. Emily has worked in public and academic and special libraries since 2015. She's currently in her last semester, about to get her master's in library and information sciences degree. She's excited to now serve as the library services coordinator at the CDD. And she told me that she aspires to become New Mexico's premier expert on romance novels featuring disabled characters. So I'm very curious to know. I had no idea there were such things. So we will have to have an offline discussion about that. So yes, I will let you take it away, Emily. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Okay, so I will share my screen now so you guys can see my presentation. But yes, I will be presenting on how you can access the Center for Development and Disabilities Special Library on Disability. If you're not already familiar, the Center for Development and Disability is a center that is within the Department of Pediatrics in the School of Medicine at UNM. Although we are part of this department and in the School of Medicine, the center is intended to be a resource for all New Mexicans, and as a consequence of that, so is our library. So any resident in the state of New Mexico can make a library card with us. And it's really great to access our resources and use our services. So the library lives in a program within the CDD called the Information Network. That's the program that I manage. So within the Information Network, there is the library. We offer online and in-person resources and services. We have information that we produce within the Information Network on different disability resources and services in the state of New Mexico. We call these tip sheets. We make them available in English and Spanish. It includes kind of guides to applying things for like waiver programs, accessible transportation in the city, in the state. My personal favorite is we have tip sheets on accessible movie theaters in the city of Albuquerque and across the state of New Mexico, where it talks about things like physical accessibility of the theaters, sensory-friendly show times, closed captioning, all those sorts of things. So these tip sheets kind of exist where We do the research for you. We call every movie theater in the state so that you don't have to kind of get this information and then compile it. And for the most part, single page tip sheets that are intended to be accessible for people with a variety of visual impairments, accessible via screen readers, all those sorts of things. We also manage a database called Finder. This is a cross-departmental resource at the CDD. We do this in partnership with our autism programs. It is a database of different resources and services in the state of New Mexico. And it's just like a really great resource to do things like find a doctor, find a summer camp, find those kinds of things. My personal favorite, well, my actual favorite service that we do is the library, but I'm the librarian, so I can't, I got to talk up some of the other things. My second favorite resource that we offer is our information specialist helpline. We have a number in the information network that anybody can call with any sort of question about any disability related need or issue, and we will help you research that topic, find resources, find services that kind of fill your need. Another service or another resource that we have at the Information Network, it's called the Medical Home Portal. It is a database full of information for both families with children who have disabilities, individuals who have disabilities, and then the professionals and physicians who are caring for those individuals. And additionally, we do training and outreach. This is a great example of kind of what we do is we partner with different organizations and programs to kind of present on our resources, help people access them. We attend conferences across the state, do events everywhere. It's a lot of fun. So if you are ever looking to kind of share this information with a wider audience, feel free to share this video, but also feel free to reach out to us directly, and we can kind of do a tailored presentation for you or your program or your organization. The library is located at 2300 Manal Boulevard Northeast at the Midtown Center. Something that is very exciting is that because the library is in the same space as a clinic for children to receive health care, we've had kind of stricter restrictions on our ability to reopen to the public because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it is very exciting because the library is now reopened to in-person use. All you have to do to make use of our resources and services in person is to just give us a call ahead. We're open from Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Yeah, and just give us a call and we can provide these resources and services in person now, which is super exciting. So what kind of resources and services can you find at our library? One, you can find a collection of specialized material that is over 9,000 titles. I think we're closer to 10,000 titles at this point. As a special library, we have a really dedicated focus and the kind of materials that we carry. So our focus is disability and development. We have an audience that is really wide ranging. We have books for babies, we have board books, all the way up through medical textbooks and resources for people who are doing serious scientific research, pursuing their PhDs, just a huge variety of information, but all focused on disability. So a lot of the materials that you can find in our library, you might not necessarily be able to find at your local public library, or if it is available, it's available at a wonderful library like Hislick, but you might not have access to it because you're not currently enrolled or you don't live in the Albuquerque area or the hours just don't work. So our specialized collection is really wonderful. Like I said, it's around 10,000 titles and it's growing all the time. Other services and resources you can find, like I briefly discussed with our tip sheets. We also produce information on different disability resources and services. So in the library, you can find our tip sheets, flyers from different programs at the CDD. And then we also make an effort to kind of collect flyers and brochures from other organizations across the state and hold them in the library so that our patrons have a wider access to the different resources and services that are available across the state. You can also find really cool assistive technology and toys in our library. We have talking books from the state library if you want to check those out, try them out. It's this really cool thing where the state library will provide individuals who have print disabilities. So that could be blindness, it could be a different kind of visual impairment, or just any sort of disability that interferes with your ability to read the written word. The state library provides talking books. It's kind of like this, it's really cool. It's this little device that will read books aloud to you. You can get one for free from the state library, but if you want to try it before you get it, you can always come down to our library and try it out. We have some really fun representational dolls for the kids who come to our library. So they are dolls who have wheelchairs and hearing aids, and the kids just love them. So that's a wonderful thing to take advantage of in person at the library. And additionally, we have a lot of assistive technology downloaded onto our computers. We have larger computer screens that you might not find in a normal library. We have screen reader software. We have adaptive keyboards that are in large print, just a variety of different technologies that can kind of facilitate access to our resources and computers and things like that. Additionally, we have periodicals and reference materials that are for in-library use only. We carry a variety of popular magazines that are on the subject of disability. We have a really wonderful collection of reference materials, which for the most part in our library, our reference materials tend to be medical texts or textbooks that are a little bit expensive. So might be a little bit difficult for an individual just doing research or taking a course to kind of purchase themselves, but it's available for use in our library. I know that one of our social work interns comes down, I feel like every other day to make use of our DSM for TR book, because that's quite an expensive book to have to purchase for a class. So we're really happy to provide those kinds of resources to people who are learning. And then, of course, a resource you can find at the library is me. I'm the library service coordinator. I can help you with anything that any other librarian can help you with. I do a lot of research assistance. Many of the pediatric residents at UNM hospitals, part of their orientation is coming to our library and becoming familiar with our resources, and I assist them with a research project to present on. So in the past, I've helped people research like culturally competent autism care in indigenous communities in New Mexico. I've done a really fun research on depictions of autism in popular media, disability concerns when it comes to international adoption. So wide variety of research topics. When it comes to disability, we can provide homework help, we can do tech tutoring. And of course, if you're ever looking for resources and services regarding disability, that's absolutely a question that you can come to us with. So what kind of items can you find in our library? I talked up that we have this huge collection of like 10,000 items. So who are these books for? We have books for professionals. We target doctors, nurses, psychologists, teachers, social workers. So we have the kind of professional text that can help guide your practice and the services that you provide to people with disabilities. Lots of books on IEPs, ethical considerations when caring for people with disabilities, instructional works, all that kind of stuff. We provide resources for families. A huge part of our patron base are parents of individuals with disabilities. We have a lot of resources for particularly siblings who are looking to learn about siblings diagnosis. We have really cool resources for partners of individuals with disabilities. Like what does it, resources for people who are like in romantic relationships with people with disabilities, and kind of just information intended for them. We have resources for people who speak languages other than English. So we have quite a large collection of materials in Spanish. We have books in different indigenous languages, in Dene, in Anishinaabe-Moan. We have materials available in ASL, which is instructional materials in ASL. And a wonderful collection of board books on baby sign language, which are maybe some of my favorite items in our collection. And then we have a growing collection of material in Braille as well. So if you're ever looking for the Goosebump books in Braille, check us out because we have those. And of course, you can find items in our library for people with disabilities. So that's obviously a huge part of who that we're targeting with our collection and services and resources, is people who are looking for information about themselves, about their diagnoses, materials that can support them in their health journey or just in their everyday life. So I'm going to talk about a few of the items in our collection to kind of get an understanding of what sort of materials that you can find here. One aspect of our collection is we provide materials about disability history and disability justice. So these are two books that were recent purchases that I'm really excited about. The first one is called After the Miracle, The Political Crusades of Helen Keller, and that's by Max Wallace. The focus of this book is that oftentimes when we think of a figure like Helen Keller, we're not thinking of like the individual who is disabled. We're thinking of like the person who saved them. We're thinking of the miracle worker, her teacher who taught her how to read and write. But Helen Keller in particular has a fascinating biography. She lived a full life after the events of the miracle worker. She was very active politically. She had a huge range of beliefs and activisms. She was a communist. She at times supported the eugenics movement. She was a major advocate for racial justice and education and women's rights. So she just has this really fascinating political history, and this book would be a great lens for anybody who is trying to learn more about the history of disability in the United States, but also to just kind of learn more about this figure that is so popular because of the people around her, but we might not necessarily know a lot about the individual herself. Another recent purchase is this book called The Ugly Laws, Disability in Public by Susan M. Schwick. You might not be familiar, but in the United States between 1870 and 1970, in most places it was illegal to be disabled in public. Like I said, it was a law from like the 1870s up until the 1970s. The last time somebody was arrested for being disabled in public was in 1974, I believe, in Kansas City. But these were laws that were passed that basically said if you have a visible disability, you're not allowed to be in public. And if you are in public and you're not in public because you are entertaining someone like in a freak show, or if you're not being used as an example of like you do drugs and your nose falls off, you can be arrested and forcibly institutionalized. So this is a really fascinating history of what disability, how disability has been perceived in the United States and treated legally. And it's very expansive. It looks at oftentimes these ugly laws were used against people who were homeless, against people who were immigrants or people of color. And naturally, they were also used against people who had disabilities. So it's just this really fascinating look at American history and a really good lens to understand more about the perception of disability and how past laws kind of inform current practices. One of the things you might be surprised is we also have fiction in our library. We're not just nonfiction. This is a little bit of where my goal to become the premier expert in disability romance in the state of New Mexico comes from. So fiction is a wonderful way to learn more about a topic. It is a great tool for developing empathy and awareness and understanding that is a little bit more interpersonal and social. So the first title, Ceremony by Leslie Marmon Silko. If you've lived in New Mexico for any period of time, you might actually already be familiar with this title. It takes place in New Mexico. It is written by a New Mexican. Specifically, it takes place on the Laguna Pueblo Reservation, and it is written by a Laguna Pueblo woman. Ceremony is truly one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. It follows a Laguna Pueblo man named Teo who enlists to fight in World War II. He is taken as a prisoner of war. And when the war ends, he comes home. He has suffered extreme trauma, and as a result has post-traumatic stress disorder. And Ceremony is kind of about his experience of having post-traumatic stress disorder and trying to find a way to heal, and interacting with both kind of white Western healthcare systems, but also traditional systems of healing. So I think this is a wonderful resource for anybody who is providing any sort of care in the state of New Mexico, because I think it'll give you kind of more of a personal perspective of what it can be like to maybe be providing a more westernized form of healthcare to people who also have traditional practices. The other book, full disclosure, this is a romance novel. It is a YA romance novel. It is about a teen girl who has HIV. She loves theater. She's just moved to a new school, and she's really stressed out over whether or not her classmates are going to find out she has HIV, because that is a highly stigmatized diagnosis. So she is trying to navigate a new romantic relationship with a boy in her theater program. And she gets a very threatening anonymous letter that, unless you stop hanging out with this boy, I'm going to tell everyone that you have HIV. So she has to find a way to navigate these interpersonal relationships, having a stigmatized diagnosis, and then also kind of navigating who she tells and how and why. So just like a really wonderful resource and really cool book. One of my favorite parts of our collection is we really have an emphasis on kind of ways people can support themselves, their health, like their well-being, and like a positive self-conception. So one of our recent purchases was this book called How to Keep House While Drowning, A Gentle Approach to Cleaning and Organized by Casey Davis. She is, I can't remember what LPC stands for. She's either a licensed therapist or a licensed clinical social worker, something like that. But she wrote this wonderful book on housekeeping and kind of caring for your home, cooking food, specifically designed for people who have disabilities like ADHD or autistic. She herself has ADHD. She has a diagnosis of depression. She raises kids who have diagnoses of autism spectrum disorder. So this book is great for anyone. She has a very empathetic approach to cleaning where, you know, you're not doing it because you want to look great. You don't, not these kind of more like surface levels. You want to keep up with the Joneses, but you take care of yourself in your home because you're worthy of care. And whatever is the method that works best for you to accomplish that is the best way to do it, because ultimately you're a person who's worthy of care. So this is a great resource for anyone. But what I like about it is she did really design it specifically with people in mind who struggle with executive dysfunctioning. She also talks a lot about chronic pain and other physical disabilities that might make cleaning or other self-care tasks difficult. So it's just a really great resource. We also have this other title called Autism, Identity, and Me. It says a professional and parent guide, but it's actually more targeted at children who have recently gotten like an autism spectrum diagnosis. So it's targeted for kids ages 10 and up. It's a workbook. We do have a lot of workbooks in our library. We just ask that, you know, you have like a sheet of paper next to you while you're working on it, or get some assistance making scans. But it's really great because this book is about helping children develop a positive self-conception of themselves as somebody who has an autism spectrum diagnosis. And this is really important. You know, we get a lot of the requests that we get from patrons are from people who have just gotten a diagnosis for the first time, or their child has just gotten a diagnosis for the first time. And that can be a really stressful or sad moment in someone's life. And we purchased this book because we had a parent of a child who recently got an autism spectrum diagnosis who was really struggling, and he really felt like, oh, this means I'm dumb now, like I'm stupid. Like that's what this diagnosis means. And so we really wanted to have resources available for this child and family that could help them understand that, no, having a diagnosis doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're dumb. You are still a good person and a smart person, and there are kind of these supportive resources to help kids kind of integrate that understanding. Like I said, we also have resources for professionals. A big part of our collection is targeted towards healthcare professionals. We have a lot of books on nursing. This one I'm particularly excited about. It's an oral history project from like 30 years of intellectual disability nursing in the UK and Ireland. Where it is just nurses kind of talking about their experience providing care for people with intellectual disabilities, talking about institutionalization and deinstitutionalization, as well as kind of healthcare burnout, care provider burnout, the need to like adequately fund these resources and services, the wonderful relationships you can develop with people when you're providing care. So this is just really great. And oral history projects, in my opinion, are really great ways to kind of develop personal connections to new information. Another resource I'm really excited about is we have this book on understanding health literacy. And this is a book targeted towards physicians. It was released by the American Medical Association, but it's targeted towards healthcare professionals. And it's essentially a guide to how you can help develop health literacy in your patients or other people that you're providing care for. This, I think, is a really vital way that healthcare providers and libraries can interact. Of course, literacy is a huge part of what we do in libraries, and health literacy is a huge part of somebody's ability to be healthy and access healthcare and the resources and services they need. So this is a really great resource that I highly recommend. So you just heard about all these books. You're like, wonderful, I'm going to read all of them. They're perfect. I'm so excited to read all of them. So how do you get to the library's website to check them out? It is a little bit buried. So the formal way to get to it is you go to unmhealth.org, you go to patient care and services, you go to developmental disabilities, you go to programs, you go to other disability resources, and then you can find the information network and the link to our library catalog. This is the formal way. I would recommend just Googling it. If you Google CDD Library or Center for Development Disability Library, the first result should be either our catalog or a page that has a link to our catalog. So when you do get to our catalog, it looks like this. You can see our advanced search feature. To register for a library card, you are just going to go right up to My Account and click Register. We have like a very, very low barrier of entry for registering for a library card. All that we ask is that you share a mailing address in the state of New Mexico. And part of why we ask that is because not only are, we provide this in-person service where you can check out books in person, but we will mail any book in our collection that is available for circulation to any address in the state of New Mexico. We are truly a service for all New Mexicans, so you do not have to be living in the Albuquerque metro area to use our resources. And I think this is particularly vital too, because a lot of our resources are intended to be a benefit to individuals who might have difficulty making a trip out to a library for any sort of reason, whether because they're medically fragile, they're immunocompromised, there's some sort of physical disability that would make it difficult. We are still here to provide service to those patrons. So yeah, you never actually have to come into the library to check out one of our books. You could register online. We will mail you your library card, and we will mail you your books, and we will also provide free return postage for you to return those books to us through the mail. So this is never at any cost to the patron to receive these items through the mail. And to do that, all you have to do is give us a call or shoot us an email. So it's super easy. So this is what our website looks like. You can see we have our featured titles. We have this really cool collection of textbooks on developmental disabilities that have all these pretty red covers. On the side, you can see that we have links to our ebook collection. We have Cloud Library, where you can find ebooks and e-audiobooks. We have SEPCO ebooks, which is targeted more towards children, where you have kind of digital picture books. Very cool. And then just other links to other disability resources and services. So our information helpline, this is the number that you call if you have any sort of disability related question. We have it, the 505 number, and then we also have a toll-free number. Like I said, this is any disability related question anytime. This is a wonderful resource, particularly if you don't know what the first step is. Like for example, for the kind of calls that we get on this helpline that we're able to help with. We recently got a call from a woman who provides care for her elderly father who has dementia, and also provides care to an adult child who has Down syndrome. And she was in the process of renovating her home to make it more accessible to both her father and son. And the contractor just took her money and disappeared. So she was in a really desperate situation where she's like, not only do I need this money back, but I actually really still need these renovations in my home. And what do I do? And I would be in the same place. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know what the next step is. Like, who do I call the police? Like, what do I do? So she was able to call us. We were able to get her in contact with a legal clinic to kind of pursue getting that money back from the contractor. But we were also able to put her in touch with local organizations in New Mexico that help people renovate their homes to make them more accessible to individuals with disabilities. So two-tiered problem, no idea where to start. We got her in contact with 2 different resources to kind of help solve this problem. Another time we had a call from a woman who has ADHD and executive dysfunctioning. Her father had recently passed away and left her a lot of paperwork to go through. And she was like, I don't even know how to start doing this. How do I process going through all these paperworks? Are there any resources or services involved? And while we weren't able to put her in contact with, she was looking for somebody. She's like, I just need somebody to come out and like essentially mirror me so that they're in the space with me to go through this paperwork with me, which is a really common tactic that people with ADHD use to kind of boost their executive functioning skills. And while there wasn't a service that we could put her in contact with that would just send someone kind of out to hang out with her while she worked on this paperwork, we were kind of able to work through what are different resources for people who have ADHD to kind of boost those executive functioning skills, and how can you leverage, like the resources that you already have access to. There's this really great suggestion of like, did your father belong to any organizations? Did he belong to a church? Lots of times you can call organizations like that, explain the situation. And yeah, somebody will send out their teenager to hang out with you, to do some like volunteer work while you work on projects like that. So it doesn't matter what the question is. We get questions like that. We get questions about who do I call for like autism screening? How do I apply for this waiver? How do I get like an IEP? A huge variety of questions, and you're always welcome to call this helpline, and we will always do our best to get you either in touch with a resource, a service, or information to help answer that question. Like I said, we also have our tip sheets. You can find our tip sheets at cdd.health.unm.edu/infonet. It's just going to be right there in that beautiful, I believe, agave plant. You can find a list of community providers. You can find, this is another place to access the library catalog, because as you may have noticed, it has kind of a weird URL. So always recommend Googling or something like that. Yeah, these tip sheets are really great. There's an example right here. So this is the tip sheet that we have on our DDD waiver allocation of services. It's available in both English and Spanish. This is information that we research for you. It can be a huge burden to like read through pages and pages of government websites, to like call people. You're like, when was the last time this was even updated? You don't even need to worry about it, because we do that research. We confirm that this is the most accurate and up-to-date information. And then we also give you kind of like the next step. So, okay, you're looking for services. You want me via services. These are the people to call. These are the next steps, but here's all the information. So this is really great. They're available in English and Spanish on a variety of topics. Our medical home portal. This is something that I use a lot. I like to think of our medical home portal, which you can find at nm.medicalhomeportal.org, as kind of a psychologically safer alternative to WebMD. If you have a question about a diagnosis or a condition, but you don't want to end up in a place where you are convinced that you have brain cancer or a flesh-eating parasite and you're about to die tomorrow, this is a great place to get similar information. So you can see up at the top, there is a section for parents and families and physicians and professionals. And this is part of why I think this resource is so valuable. So let's take a look at the parents and families side of things. Under parents and families, you can find tabs for caring for your child and family, and then also a tab for learning about diagnoses and conditions. And this is the part that I think is super helpful. So like, let's say that your child or even yourself, you get an anxiety disorder diagnosis and you're like, what does that even mean? We have a really comprehensive FAQ of what is an anxiety disorder, what causes it, what are the symptoms, what does it mean to be diagnosed, where can I find help? Just a really great FAQ. What's nice about this is that these are written by physicians, by medical professionals. At the very bottom, you have a list of citations, who wrote it, when it was last updated. So you can kind of verify that this is accurate and up to date and reliable information. And then it also connects you to local resources. So for something like anxiety disorders, you might have links at the bottom to like local support groups, local organizations, advocacy organizations, those kinds of things. So it's a really great resource. I have found that when people come to the library where they're like, my grandson just got, you know, an autism diagnosis, what does that even mean? All of the questions they give to me are the ones that are in the FAQ. And it's really great for me because I'm not a medical professional. I don't necessarily want to be answering those questions with just my background, but this gives me a resource where this is medically verified information that I can share with them to answer those kinds of questions. And what's really great is if we go to the physicians and professionals side of things, there's also a tab for diagnoses and conditions. And you can see what that looks like from the physician perspective. So let's say that you've like taken on a new patient, they have an anxiety disorder. You're like, oh, this is like my first person with this in like a while. Like, let me brush up real quick to like make sure that I'm most up to date. So it really breaks down like these are the diagnoses that fall under anxiety disorders. It gives a lot of resources to professionals. It gives you the coding, talks about the prevalence, the genetics, practice guidelines, how you can function as a medical home for people who have anxiety disorders. Great information about clinical assessment, treatment, diagnosis, prognosis. And I think the best thing for physicians and professionals, again, is going to be that kind of reference list at the bottom where it links you to many journal articles and resources that were used to write this page that you should have access to because they're open access resources. And at the very bottom, you'll also find the doctor who wrote this page, when they wrote it, and when it was last updated. So again, it's just a super useful resource, especially if anxiety disorders are relatively common, but let's say that you're seeing somebody who has a rare diagnosis or condition. This can be a great way to get the quick brush up that isn't, you know, Wikipedia or WebMD or something like that. New Mexico Finder, this is our database of different resources and services. We work with our autism program to keep this updated and add new resources and services, though it's not just specific to autism. It covers a variety of resources and services for different diagnoses and conditions. You can find this at nmfinder.org. If you're ever like, I actually know a really great resource that is not in here. It's super easy to submit. It's just that submit right now. You can submit all the information you have, we follow up on it, and then if it's really not in the database, but it's relevant to what its purpose is, we will add it. And what I like about it is that the Finder search, when you're searching for resources, it's not just like the traditional type in some keywords kind of thing. It's really icon based, which is really great because oftentimes a huge barrier to finding information is just not being familiar with like the best way to use keywords or search terms, which, you know, I'm definitely here for. If you're ever having trouble with that, please come to me and I'll help you with that kind of online searching. But this is really great if you're just trying to work independently. So you can select these icons, topic of interest for stage of life, for diagnosis and service area. And you can find like a full list of the different resources and services we have in this database for those needs. And like I said, we provide training and outreach. We do what I like to call in-reach at the library, where we do kind of in-library programming and community events. This Halloween, for example, we're doing a trick-or-treating event with the New Mexico School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, which is super exciting. Hopefully we'll start doing some sensory-friendly story time programs in the library soon. We attend conferences and events, and when we're at these conferences and events, we're not just sharing information about the library, but all the different programs and resources at the CDD, and oftentimes at UNM or even from the state. And we do presentations like this, in person and online. So yeah, that's about all I have in terms of our resources, how to get a library card. Yeah, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great. Outstanding presentation. Thank you so much, Emily. I have two questions.
Yeah.
Well, I have three questions actually. Yeah. I'll start with one and then I'll pass it, but I do have three. The first is how, we have learners, faculty, and staff, and some of them access resources through ARC, the Accessibility Resources Center. in your experience, how have there been experiences where you and ARC have coordinated resources to better serve learners? Could you highlight some of those experiences? Because I would imagine, so one of the things that have come up are like recordings of classes,
Yeah.
books and materials that ARC just can't pay for or give to the student. So have there been experiences how you've been able to work with ARC to better serve an individual's needs?
You know, that is a really interesting question. So I'm relatively new in this position. I started less than a year ago. And one of the things that we're really aggressively trying to do right now is the library was closed during COVID because we were in this clinical space. And at the same time, our longtime librarian retired. And it took a little bit for somebody new to be hired in this position. So I know in the past we've done a lot of coordination with ARC. But that is something I'm definitely going to pursue because that is a perfect example of the kind of resource that our library can serve. Is if there is a student with a disability who is having trouble accessing specific titles or resources, like at their local library or their school library, we're definitely here, I think, to kind of be a supplement to those resources.
Should I go ahead and ask my second one or just someone else?
Yeah.
So second question is, you were mentioning people can become a member. So it was interesting when you said that, because when I think about when I walk around our campus, you need an ID to get into the School of Medicine. You need an ID to get through certain doors of the hospital. You need an ID to get into like certain buildings. So is HISLIC the only entity where even community can access without a restriction? Like, can you be a high school student, or you first have to become a member of your library and then can access?
So that is a really interesting question. And I think this is one of the challenges that like the CDD library faces in terms of raising awareness and visibility and promoting access, is we're actually not part of HISLIC at all. We are totally separate from all of the academic libraries on campus. Yeah, it can be kind of like a little bit of like a mind twister, because you're like UNM library, but not one of the ones I know, like not affiliated with anyway. But yeah, so in terms of who can get a library card with us, and what sort of kind of security measures there are at the CDD. Like I said, we're currently open by appointment. Part of the process of coming in for that appointment is checking in at our front desk. But unlike HISLIC, which has you show like a photo ID or a student or staff ID, our process here, it's a little bit more similar to the kind of check-in that you would do at a doctor's office. You let the front desk know, like, hi, this is my name, I'm here to do this, and then they record it in kind of like a HIPAA compliant way. And then they just send you over to the library. So right now, yeah, you don't need photo ID to use the library, to use the CDD library. We do ask for a mailing address and a mailing address in the state of New Mexico. But again, that's a little bit more just functional because we do so many mailing services. But yeah, so a high school student in New Mexico can absolutely get a library card with us, but I don't think a library card with us confers any sort of access to those on-campus resources. But my understanding of HISLIC is that a high school student can use the library there. It's just not necessarily the same way that like a student, staff, or faculty would use the library.
Yeah, we are open to the public because we are a state-funded library. Only between 8 and 5 and a few hours on the weekend. And of course, somebody has to be able to park here, which is the benefit that Emily has, that she has lots of parking where she.
Yeah, lots of free parking.
But yeah, we are open to the public. Anybody can come in. We do have 2 community computers, and any of the librarians can help people with questions that they have, medical questions. Our collection, on the other hand, is very much focused on our health professions program, so probably less accessible to most public members that come in, but we are definitely open to the public for sure. And you don't have to show an ID to come in. Except after 5, you have to badge in. So, yeah. But Emily offers a lot more goodies for free, and she ships them all over the state. So, yeah, she's got us beat on that.
Yeah, that was so amazing and so impressive. I'm like really impressed. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite things that we offer.
I do have one more, but also,
Yeah.
am I just talking too much? Okay.
Go.
The next question for both of you is, I think growing up, it was always interesting to see how you fashion and operationalize library spaces. Like, I felt like growing up, they were, if you wanted to explore certain topics, they were sometimes hidden. And now as culture changes, we give certain visibility. Can you talk, I mean, maybe disability, was content related to disability identity always alphabetized? What has been the, I guess, the steps of inclusion that libraries now fashion so that it is not like it doesn't perpetuate a bias, but more of inclusion? Does that, I don't know if
Sure. No, I totally hear you. And that's a really interesting question, particularly because kind of what I'm hearing you is you're talking about how books are organized in the library, how they're
Yeah.
classified, how they're shelved.
Yeah.
And one of the really interesting things about the CDD library is we don't use a standard classification scheme like Dewey Decimal or the Library of Congress, or I think
National Library of Medicine.
Yes, thank you. The National Library of Medicine. We don't use those classification schemes. We have our own kind of in-house classification scheme that we use just in this library. And one of the reasons why we do that is because if we were to try to use something like Library of Congress, even though it's really great for large detailed collections, most of our content would still end up kind of under the same few call numbers because it's all on the same topic of disability. So we have our own classification scheme where many times books are organized by either diagnosis, or they're organized by issues affecting adults with disabilities, issues affecting children with disabilities, issues affecting people across the lifespan. And I totally hear you about kind of ensuring that there's access in the way we classify and organize things, and kind of also reducing stigma. That's actually something that one of the benefits of having our own classification scheme is that it's a little bit easier to change if it's not working versus try to go to the Library of Congress and be like, we need to change this classification scheme. So for example, for a really long time, many of our books on autism spectrum disorders were split across 2 different classifications, one for, disability Asperger's, the other one for disability autism. So we're changing that classification. So now it's all under disability autism spectrum disorders. And one of the things too that we're doing as I'm kind of reclassifying some of these items is in the past, kind of the subcategories have been really focused or made it clear that this collection is for parents of children with autism spectrum disorder, but we also serve adults with autism spectrum disorder, or books specifically for children with autism spectrum disorder, or even parents of, this is where it kind of came to a head, is we bought a parenting book for parents who have autism, and we didn't have any place to classify it because the only parenting autism classification we had was for parenting children with autism. So I was like, we're redoing this. So yeah, I think it definitely matters how we kind of highlight those collections and organize them to make them accessible and to reduce stigma. And I know even in circumstances where you can't necessarily change the classification scheme because it's, again, like, it's a big endeavor to go to the Library of Congress and be like, actually change it for, every LOC library in the country. There are definitely ways to promote access in terms of shelving. Best practices is to not shelve on like the bottom or top shelf so that it's more accessible to people. There are displays a really great way to like highlight collections. I know we have a lot of our fiction books on displays right now because I'm really pushing like learning about disability through fiction right now. So yeah, there are definitely lots of ways that I think we in libraries try to do that.
And I think for our library, we've done an audit of our collection to look at where some of our material is landing. Like we had noticed that there were some books related to gender issues, that we had some older books that were maybe of historical or research interest, but shouldn't be next to something that was related to a more progressive view of gender identity. And so we've been going through our collection and looking at that kind of thing. And there's also been some moves with the National Library of Medicine to change some of their like medical subject headings, because they're using very outdated terms like Indians, common North American, or illegal aliens, or things like that. So there's definitely a bigger awareness trying to change those things. But for our collection, we haven't historically had a whole lot of stuff that was more identity related, but we have really started in the last few years to expand our medical humanities collection and our graphic medicine collection. So those two items or those two collections are having more space for voices for people with various disabilities or diseases or whatever, so that they have places to express those and students can read those, faculty, staff, whomever. And we're renovating the second floor of the library, and we're planning to have some movable exhibits, sort of book exhibits like you'd see in a bookstore. So we'll have spaces where we can highlight some more sort of less like Atlas of the Rat Brain, but something a little more exciting that people would want to pick up and read and take home with them. So yeah.
No, I appreciate that. That's fascinating. And there's such history behind it, and then where we're going, right? Which is a great narrative. And because I do remember like going to the library and being uncomfortable looking at certain books, right, around identity, and like just hiding in a corner. And I'm just wondering, how the changing culture and climate has changed library spaces.
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking that. Something that a way that I'm also hoping to build up our collection is, as Ingrid said, I'm in my last semester of my library and information science master's program, and it has been impossible to find textbooks through libraries for the most part, because I wasn't working at an academic library for a while, and those are pretty much the only places those books are housed. And because they're kind of a specialized academic discipline, those books are more expensive. But something that the center has been really supportive of me doing is purchasing books about like disability in the library, disability services in public libraries. So one of the things that one of the areas I'm eventually hoping to kind of expand in terms of our outreach is doing a lot of stuff with public libraries across the state. Ingrid was very nice to set this up. I was able to do a presentation for the state tribal libraries program, but hopefully, these, like right behind me right now, I have a textbook on disability in the library. I don't think a public library necessarily needs to purchase those, like $150, but I really love the idea of us being able to have this kind of resource in our library that is then available to libraries and librarians across the state, because of things like our mailing services and our kind of like open patron policy.
Well, thank you again. Excellent presentation. I really learned a lot. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. And I hope people will be watching this or will watch it recorded, because as I said, the CDD library is such a hidden gem and has so many amazing resources, not only for UNM, but the entire state of New Mexico. So really appreciate all the work that you do. So
well, yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Emily.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.